Hey everybody, good morning. How's everybody doing today? Good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is in the world for you. Let's see, we have, oh, hey, John Georgi. Hey, I got your book. I love it. I'm gonna start reading that soon. I haven't read a book in, wow, probably at least 10 years, maybe more. Sad. And I've bought a few books that I've intended to read in the past. Like I bought a Ansel Adams book, and I just kind of skimmed through the pictures, and I said, "Yeah, I got to get back to this," and I never did. But John sent me a book that he authored, edited, and also a magazine that he was chief editor, and it's electronics related. But that was really a nice gift, and just thank you so much, John. I really love it. I love it. And oh, hey, Patrick and Peter, John, Jeff, good to see you. Um, oh, hey, John Softly, I got your email this morning. I appreciate that. Um, John was talking about my last video on stops, right? I guess on exposure stops. Again, it's a video for beginners. I think most enthusiasts have a pretty good feel for setting, doing camera settings in terms of stops, but I thought I was a little happier with that video than the part one video I made, because part one, like I was saying, it's just I just took like this thing that I love and made it, as boring as you can. But anyhow, yeah, the part two I thought was a little better that I put out this week. And also, I have another video I'm going to put out maybe today. I just need to edit one or two little things, but I finished comparing the Canon RP, or reviewing it. I guess it's kind of a review. I don't know. I just talked about my impressions on it, and yeah, it's fine. Um, but that video is, yeah, it's kind of high level. I don't know if it's worth it to put out or not, but people were asking me what I thought about it, so there it is. And then hi, Music, how are you? And John McCormick, good morning. You were asking about Rick. Yes, I did reach out to Rick last week, or earlier this week, I should say. And his surgery got postponed to Monday, I think. Monday, this kind like tomorrow or Tuesday. He had to be, for whatever reason, I can't remember. He told me what it was. It wasn't anything with his health issue, but something, I think, administratively, because of everything going on. So that's going to be for this week. So I sent him his well wishes on that, and he was, but he's in good spirits and was happy to hear. And I told him everybody in the chat section misses him. And he said he'll try to drop in if he can, but that could be spotty. But we all wish him well, and hope to see him again soon here in the chat section. Marcia, hi, good morning. And Andreas, yes, I saw you were here first, right? Because I was setting up the stream. Excuse me. This is actually about an hour and a half earlier than I normally do the streams. So hopefully I didn't catch too many people off guard, and there's going to be some people coming like an hour and a half later wondering what happened, and I'm doing photo editing, right? And not the stream, because there's really two different kinds of viewers I found. That there's a group that really enjoys the chit chat and the stream and the Q&A, and then another group that likes both photo editing and chit chat, but then some don't like the photo editing part at all, just, which I get. uh so it's a little smaller group in the second half, but that's a good time too. We just edit photos, and I put mine out there so you guys can edit mine, which is, it's always amazing to see what you guys do with my photo. The one I sent this week was a little rough, but I put it out last night, kind of last minute, and I said, well, I like this picture, but I don't. I don't know. Maybe you guys could do a better job with it than I can. Oh, anyhow, hi, good morning, Andreas. Yes, and Marcia. So, like I was saying, I finished my Canon RP review, and it's the Canon dual pixel autofocus is really good. And not just for video, because that's all you see online is people talk about the dual pixel for uh, video, right? Where people are walking around, going in and out of frame, and like that's the tests are interesting and I guess useful when people are, you know, walking back and forth and going in and out of frame and dodging in and out and then putting their hand up and down. That's not real, right? I mean, if I was filming somebody and they were doing that, I'd be like, just stand still, you know? My God, what's wrong with you? But uh I did some of the same things just to see for comparisons. And um yeah, but for photography, the autofocus, the dual pixel autofocus, along with the the artificial intelligence or whatever it is for tracking, is really good on that camera. It's not great, like you cannot substitute, you know, photographer skill for tracking sports and action type subjects, right? There's really I don't see any substitute for that. The human eye is always going to do better than any computer, at least for now, right? I haven't found any system, because I see a lot of people testing the auto tracking or the continuous autofocus tracking, like the EM1X, for example, was really impressive, like tracking cars and trains and whatever else it was when I saw the demos. And when I tried it, it was good, but I don't know that it's really that good in real life for other things, when like Canon or who, I forget, some cameras are saying animal detection and human body detection and things like that. And my EM1 Mark II that I'm using right now with a Panasonic lens, no less, doesn't do any of that, right? And I just turn on face detect and I'm tack sharp. It's fine. It doesn't need all of that other tracking stuff, in my opinion. Especially for photography, just use a single point or 5 point, focus on whatever it is, and just track it with your eye, right? You have to have a little bit of a skill set and practice, but uh, I just don't understand why they go through so much trouble, and because they spent a lot of time working on that, right, engineering wise, and ultimately, it's no substitute, in my opinion, for, again, skill and practice, experience, things like that. Uh, which is, why I love photography, because it's really a never-ending journey, all right, or learning experience. You can do this your whole life and still feel like a beginner, I think. It's just amazing. And another thing came up. I was in a conference call with a local photography club yesterday, the Virginia Beltway Photographers Club. I never get the name right, but it's run by John Crooks, who's a viewer here, and I met some interesting photographers there. And what was I going to talk about? But well, one of the things I do remember we talked about was my mental acuity is slipping, because I just can't remember. I'll like start on a train of thought and then I'll forget what I'm talking about. There was something else. Maybe it'll come to me. But it was a lot of fun meeting people. There was one guy there, another guy named David, who primarily shoots film, and he had probably about 50 in view of camera that I could see in his stream, 50 film cameras behind him, and he had one row of about 20 or 30 Olympus film cameras, like the Trip 35s in various colors, and he had a Pen F, the film Pen F, and the one of my favorites that I want to get, and I think Peter Forsgaard has one too, is one of the Panasonic R35s. Or I'm not the Panasonic, Olympus R35s, the older rangefinders that had the fixed focal length. And the and he had some medium formats, and it's really interesting to see all of the old film gear. Uh, because again, I think you really have to rely on your skills as a photographer when you use a film camera versus all of the features in our modern cameras. And I get it why they tell people practice on a film camera. If you really want to learn photography, I get that philosophy. I don't think it's I don't think you should start with a film camera personally, but I think as you grow in photography, it's worth shooting with film just a few times, just to get a feel for a very different experience in photography and contrast that with how digital photography is today. And I think you'll get a little more perspective about how digital cameras work when you actually use a film camera. Excuse me. Um, but yeah, I think people should really just start with a regular digital camera if they're going to learn photography. But then, yeah, at some point, I think it's not a bad idea to shoot with film for a little while and get experience with that for a different perspective. So a lot of people dropped in since I started. Let's see. Oh, Lysippus, good afternoon. And Quinn, Brian, Arthur, Chuck. I don't know why my voice is so so scratchy this morning. It's just too early, I guess. I'm trying to adjust my sleep schedule so I can go to these really early morning photo walks that the local club likes to do. They got one next weekend at like 6 freaking 30 in the morning. I mean, which is okay. If I adjust my sleep schedule, I'm still trying, but it's weird. It's like jet lag. Shifting your schedule to get up 3-4 hours earlier than you normally do is it takes a few days and then you get it, but then one night where you go to bed like at your old sleep schedule and it's like everything resets and you're back to that, and then it's hard to get back. It's it's hard. So remember Cheryl Teague's doing commercials for Olympus OM2? Wow, really? Oh, I'd love to look that up. I bet those commercials are on YouTube. Man, that would be awesome. I'm a big fan of like the 70s and 80s. I was a teenager then, right? So not even a teenager, but very, in the 70s I was a teenager at the end of the 70s, but uh yeah, Cheryl Teague's, Linda Carter, one of my favorites. Childhood dreams. I gotta get rid of this horse in my throat. Yeah, no chimping on film, right, Roberto? And John Gabriel, good to see you from Sydney. Yeah, this is almost a good time for you guys. It's a little bit late there, I think, right? It's probably almost 11 o'clock at night. I have a Tuesday stream where I start at like 7 a.m. I might try and move that up even more. Because there's a lot of great, people down in Australia and New Zealand and um, Indonesia, that whole time zone that I'd love to just hang out with. So I can do that, right? If I just get up earlier. Um, and then, hi, Rod, how are you? Yeah, I got my TARDIS background. I'm a little off center here. I wonder if I can move a little bit. Um, about, yeah, that's a little better. I love Doctor Who. I mean, all the doctors, they're all really good. I haven't watched enough of the first two doctors that are mostly in black and white. The the pacing and the timing and everything is very different than some of the more modern stuff, right? But it's very interesting to see how the different actors play basically the same character and add their own personality to it. And I think in a lot of ways we can apply that in photography, right? A lot of us can look at the same scene and take very different images or edit them very differently. and come up with our own, image, our own perspective of that scene. That's why I love the photo editing section, because even though a lot of times my edits aren't that great, like if I'd spent some more time, maybe I would have come up with something completely different. But I think people enjoy seeing a different perspective sometimes. And like I said, I put my pictures out there for you guys to edit, so I can always see what your perspectives are. And it's really amazing what everybody does. I'm always so impressed with the edits of my own images. And Music Songgear says there's a bunch of commercials with her. They all look like they're from the OM10s. Okay. Man, I had no idea. I don't remember. I wasn't into photography back then. I had the little, flash cube. I forget what they call them. Instomatics back then. And then even then I was more into like taking it apart and looking at how it works than I was the photography itself at that age. But yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. There's I think in high school, that's more like in the early 80s. I was more into Lonnie Anderson. But still, I think of all time, one of the most beautiful women from that era, I think, was like Linda Carter. um, and John says, I have four OM cameras, but usually the OM1 mainly due to the flip up mirror for macro. Oh, I didn't know it had that. I'll have to look at mine and see. Not that I'd ever attempt macro with a old film camera, but maybe. I don't have any macro lenses. I'd have to buy extension tubes or something for an OM mount. Wow, that would be interesting. I'd love to go out again and take pictures with some OM lenses on my new Olympus cameras. Those are really great lenses. People are asking me time to time what are good lenses, and John Softly and I think we agree. The 50 f1.8, the 24 2.8, and the 135. I think it's an f3.5. Those three lenses, really, if you have those three, you're pretty much set for good cheap glass. I mean, there's probably others, but those three I think are sort of a good base to start with. Oof. Wow, I really tried to be up and alive for you guys this morning, but it's just not happening. I'm really trying. But I gotta shift my schedule so I can get up earlier. I get actually so much more done. Getting up early, and then I can spend my day like you've noticed that this past week I put out 2 videos, right? Because I've been getting up earlier. And that's, as of late, I haven't been really publishing more than one a week, less than that this year. So I got 4 videos out this month so far, and I got at least one more ready, 99% there. And then another 2 in mind that shouldn't take too long. But it's making a difference, I think, and hopefully that helps you guys more. The OM1 is the only one with a flip. Really? I never know. That's my OM2. My OM1 is downstairs. I'm not sure it's even functional. I haven't tried it in a long time. Roberto says my raw look average, but after editing they look great. It's normal for others. Yes. Yeah, raw files are generally a little bit flat, right? That's why they're raw files. So I think you definitely have to process raw images. It's very hard to get, great looking images directly from a raw file straight out of camera, because by definition they're unprocessed and usually not exactly what you saw with your own eyes. So yeah, don't worry about that. You definitely need to edit raw images. I mean, yeah, you can crank them out straight out of camera, but like my sunflower pictures, a lot of those I cranked, I just converted the raw to JPEG and posted them, and they were they were a little bit flat. I mean, not terrible. I mean, they were kind of neat pictures, but uh, with a little processing, they got that extra little bite to them, right? And but like I normally like to post images that are straight out of camera just so everybody can see the baseline. Lately, I've had a few images that I processed in Lightroom, just because I wanted to, I don't know, I just felt like it. But I always post in the description all of my camera settings and whether or not I process them or if they're straight out of camera, so everybody can see exactly what's happening, because it makes a difference. It's really frustrating when I see these gorgeous images, and because I have a little experience now, I can tell some are processed, but there's times when I'm like, what did the raw image look like straight out of camera? What were their settings? Because you don't know how much is going on. Was there some layering, some layer masks, gradient masks to bring this highlights back in, or did they bracket this shot? Particularly shots that are high dynamic range, things like that. And the like no, I'm not discrediting the image at all. I mean, they're still fantastic images, but when you're trying to learn photography and how people do get these shots, I always felt like they could tell us a little more, give us a little more information, and that's why I always, in every Instagram post, do my best to post all the information that I have about that image. If it's straight out of camera, what were the settings? If I did any processing, what processing did I do? Unless there was a ton of them, then I'll just say, yeah, I edit this in Lightroom. Just if I don't put a description in my Instagram about how much editing I did, just trust me, I did a lot then. But otherwise, oh my goodness, Cola, thank you so much. That's so generous of you. I appreciate that. Wow. Um, that helps me out a lot. Let's see. Serge says the video with the exposure stop was very interesting. Oh, okay, thank you. Arthur is asking, any thoughts on using higher quality higher quality vintage lenses like Leica, Takumar, and Zeiss? I think it's Takumar, not Takuma, right? But I could be wrong. When you say higher quality lenses, you mean, well, shoot, you said it right there. Higher quality vintage lenses. I think it's great. Uh, you know, Particularly these brands like Leica and Takumar and Zeiss, they did their very best given the technology that they had at the time, right? Polishing the glass, designing the glass, and how they stack together to give you that final image. And they didn't have the benefit of today's, computer controlled and all the engineering and experience that designers have today. Uh, and what we end up with in our modern lenses are technically perfect, right? High contrast. I mean, if it's a quality, let's talk about quality glass, modern quality glass, right? Very little chromatic aberration, very little distortion, virtually no vignetting, and then the sharpness and all of that. The older lenses, of course, they try to do the same thing, but in the end, there's two things that affect the image quality versus a modern lens, or three things. One is obviously lens design. They don't, they did their best with what they had, but they're not technically perfect in design, meaning they could still have chromatic aberration, they could have lens distortion, they could have clearly vignetting. The other challenge with older lenses is they can age, right? And with that aging comes, I don't know, I've seen some glass turn yellow, right? And glass itself is not a solid. It seems solid to us, right? But glass itself is a liquid, and over time, it'll start to distort, right? And a good example is like if you look at glass panes on very old buildings, hundreds of years old, you'll see lots of ripples, right, in the glass. And that's not because they didn't make them flat when they came out. A lot of times it's because the glass is actually melting. And if you measure the thickness of the glass at the top of the pane versus the bottom of the pane, over time, the bottom of the pane will be thicker because the glass is melted. And so that's another challenge. I don't know how long it takes for that to take effect, but that is another impact on the lenses over time. Then they have lots of interesting design or engineering techniques to make the glass. Like I've heard about like some radioactive glass that they used by injecting some isotope or whatever it is. They did a lot of interesting things to try to make the image quality better, and it was designed for film, but it doesn't matter, And it's so basically what's happening is all of this design, from the engineering point that was available to him at the time, the age of the lens with all of the things that time does to anything, right? I think give the lens that character, because technically these are imperfections in the lens, whether it's by design or if it's by age. The lens becomes less perfect than its original design because of age, and then less perfect because of the lack of experience in engineering techniques that we have in modern lenses. So I love old glass for their character, and by character I mean for their defects. And defects such as swirly bokeh, right, is a defect in the lens. Vignetting in the corners is technically a defect, the chromatic aberration. But sometimes the simplicity of the design, they're only using 3 or 4 lenses in an entire lens versus 3 or 4 pieces of glass to make the lens versus my God, that 100 to 400 zoom has 21 or 30 elements in it, like a bunch of elements. It's hard to find a lens anymore that has less than like a dozen elements in it. To do all these corrections to fix that imperfection. And the simplicity of design, I think, also adds to the character of the lens, right? Because they're not trying to correct every single thing. So yeah, I think, if you can find some that are affordable, there's some gems out there. The Leica Junipers are gems. That Russian lens, I forget what it's called, is a gem for like $30 to $50. And this is when I was looking at them. I don't know what the current prices are. I definitely, I mean, the only decent vintage lenses I have, and they're not vintage really, they're from the 70s, I think. Still makes them like 50 years old, but I really love my Nikon 135 f3.5. I love that lens. My Nikon 200mm f4. The images out of that, it's just a 4 lens design. Where is that thing? This thing. A lot of you have seen me show this before, but this only has 4 lens elements in it, and it's a 200mm f4. This has the Micro Four Thirds adapter on it. And of course, these vintage lenses are built like tanks. But yeah, this is just it's just beautiful lens, and the images they just have some depth to them that I can't explain. That's probably because of the focal length and aperture, but when I put if I can ever find it again, my low focal reducer on it, it becomes like I think a 150 or about a 150mm f 2.8. I gotta find that focal reducer because it's really good on this lens. But yeah, that's a long answer to what I think about the lenses, but I just wanted to kind of explain my rationale for why I really love vintage glass, and I'd love to do more of that, but I'm just so bogged down with everything I have now. But over time, I have time, right? We all have time. Just take your time and enjoy photography, and buy these lenses There's probably lots of forums out there that I used to go to that talked about these vintage lenses. But there's a guy on YouTube, I can never remember his name, but he has an excellent channel on vintage glass as well. But he talks about weirdo glass, you know, stuff like projector lenses and and lenses he makes out of ice. You know, he does some weird stuff, but he has a lot of content on some vintage lenses that you might want to consider. Okay, wow, so I went a long way on just vintage glass there. John says, looking for a budget laptop for editing. Yes, for suggestions. I would say the HP Omen 15 with the Ryzen 4800H processor, 16 gig of RAM, and a 1 terabyte hard drive. It also has the GTX 1660 Ti video card in it that'll help with some of the processing as well if you're using software that takes advantage of GPU processing. But for the most part, having those 8 threads or 8 core 16 thread at 4.2 gigahertz and excellent thermals to maintain a high speed. And that laptop right now is on sale for like $1,100. And you'd have to spend, I don't know how much more you could spend before you could get a faster computer. You could spend $3,000 and you're not going to get a faster computer. You might get more RAM or hard drive space, but it's not going to be faster. It may even be slower than that machine. That's one of the best machines for photo editing, and it was on my short list. I had 2 laptops that I was looking at. Well, I had about 1,000 laptops I was looking at, but there was 2 that came almost you know, that I narrowed it down to 2 is what I'm trying to say. And that ended up being number 2. It was number 1 for a long time, but it ended up being number 2. And not because of the processing power or the video card, but because of the ports on the HP Omen. They're all Gen 1, so they're all 5 gigabits USB ports. And I attach a lot of external drives to my laptop. So I wanted to have Gen 2 ports so I could hook up external NVMe drives. And I'm glad I did because it's really fast. The NVMe drives hooked up externally, I get almost 1,000 megabits throughput on them. You know, when you're doing long reads and writes, but that would be my recommendation. And that you know, for that kind of money. And then with the extra $200 you have left over, if your budget's $1,500, I would either buy an additional NVMe drive because it has 2 NVMe drive card slots, or upgrade the RAM to 32 gig. Of the 2, I'd probably get another hard drive, you know, NVMe SSD, I should say, with the extra bucks, or say, you know, take that money you saved and buy another lens or something. As if you need any. John has a humongous collection. Oh, and Lane says, my English is not so good, but I understand something and I use the EM10.3 and the EM5.3. Very good. I'm glad you're here. I know what you mean. Like, you can understand a different language more than you can speak it. Sometimes, because, you know, over your lifetime, sometimes you pick up a second language, right? So I've tried Korean and Spanish and Chinese to where I could at least say hello and understand a little bit. Like, if I saw a group of people talking and I knew what the context of the conversation was, I could almost understand what they were talking about, but I had very trouble speaking, you know, and communicating with them. If I walked into a crowd and I had no idea what they were talking about, then I would struggle to understand what the conversation was. But when there was context, so anyway, welcome, thanks. I'm so happy to have you here. And good morning, Sephron. Good to see you. Robert Polton, always good to see you. And he's asking, with your camera settings, shadows, highlights, white balance selection, can they be set to a custom setting? Yes. You just set them and save them to a my set or custom setting, and then every time you go back to that or recall that custom setting, it'll recall those things. But white balance is a little bit different. Let me think. I'm confused because if you have a Pen F, it's a little bit trickier with the custom settings than it is any of the other Olympus cameras. So if you do that, just double check the white balance when you're switching from one custom mode to another one and see if that changes. That may not get saved. I think white balance is a little bit trickier. But the other settings, yeah, definitely highlight shadows and anything else you do. All that stuff gets saved. But white balance, I'm pretty sure that gets saved as well. But I just can't remember because I know on the Pen F I was struggling a little bit with some of the custom settings because it has another layer of customization with that mode dial on the front, and that's where it got a little tricky with white balance. And Lasipa says, in your second video on exposure, you mentioned choosing a different aperture or shutter speed while getting the same exposure in terms of stops. This reminds me of the program shift. Do you ever use program shift? No, I normally pick a mode, aperture, shutter, or manual. I never use program mode. But it's the same idea, right? Program shift is just it's not too different from exposure compensation if you're using a different mode like aperture priority. That's all program shift is. But if you want to try to use a higher aperture, the camera will adjust the other settings like shutter speed and ISO to adapt to the aperture that you chose when you're in program mode. So it's shifting everything. So rather than like an exposure comp where it's shifting things to adjust the overall brightness of the image, program shift is trying to maintain the same exposure or brightness, but then shift the other two settings to match whichever one you're trying to have, that where you have that variable, if it's aperture or shutter speed. And John Gabriel, hello, says, hi Rob, where are your photos that you post to us to edit? Just interested to know if my editing is any good. I do them in a live stream. After this one, I usually do a live stream, and then at the end of the editing live stream where I edit everybody else's pictures, we go over the pictures that people edited my image. So today's photo editing live stream starts less than an hour from now, in about 45 minutes, and then they last usually less than 2 hours. So if you want to kind of come in towards the end, then you'll be able to see the editing of my photos. And John Painter says lens coatings are much better these days. Yes, they are very good for flare and contrast, right? So that's another thing with old lenses. It's even more important to use a lens hood because there's a lot of flare can happen. Oh, well, there's Rod saying the same thing. Old glass can produce wonderful flares. Yes. So like I said, any limitations or added advantages that a camera may have, you can always put that to your advantage, right? Use lens flare as part of the image. An old lens yellowing is caused by thorium in the glass formula. Can be removed. Oh, that's right. Thank you, John. Can be removed with UV light. Yes, I'll just put the lenses by my bug zapper, and the UV light will kill the fungus too, right? If there's any potential growth for fungus, or if there's fungus there already, it'll keep it from spreading. And the Markville says, hi Uncle Rob, it is just me, or I feel limited when using my M43 when shooting at night. Do you have suggestions on how to lessen the noise and make my shots look better in low light? For me, if you're just hand holding walking around, I always try to make sure that whatever subject I pick to take a picture of, that the other things around that subject are completely black to reduce the look of noise in the overall image, and then just have the person's eye drawn to the main subject, where hopefully that will be clean. Because even in low light, if there's a point in the scene that's fairly well lit, then that will have less noise in that part of the image. And then the rest of the image where the light falls off is where the noise starts to really kick up. So typically at night, I'll adjust my highlight and shadow settings in the camera. If I want to get images straight out of camera, I'll crush the shadows even more, so that any kind of noise gets crushed to black and virtually becomes invisible at that point. So it's a similar technique that people use for astrophotography, where they're really crushing the blacks, right, and bringing out the highlights so you can see the stars but not the noise around the stars. And that's what I do. You know, if you're trying to well, if it's low light and everything's evenly lit, then there's not much you can do. I just turn on the noise filter to low to eliminate any color noise sometimes, and a little bit of the grain if I want the straight out of camera JPEG. Otherwise, I have to process a lot in RAW. And sometimes there's no saving a picture if you're very sensitive to noise, you know. But that's what I do generally for my images at night, if I'm hand holding. Otherwise, I always try to bring a tripod and just use long exposure to adjust for that. Another technique, if you're on a tripod, is, and like they do in astrophotography, is you take multiple images and stack them together in post-processing. So that you know, that's a couple of ways to kind of get around noise when you're shooting in low light. But hand holding is just a matter of choosing your subject and crushing the stuff that are not part of the subject to make them as dark as possible. And Wu-Dang, good to see you. I believe the most interesting ones are very sharp vintage triplets, meaning only 3 elements glass. Yes, those are always very interesting. You know, how do they do that with 3 lenses, right? And another fun thing can be the enlarger lenses. Add them with a helicoid, and you basically get a zoomable prime. Yes, I remember, Wu-Dang, when you and I were first corresponding, we talked about vintage glass. Let's see, and Andreas says, I have a Summicron 2.035 and a Summilux 1.450 from Leica M lenses. Yes, very nice. And Lane says, old lenses with character. Old lenses are lenses with character. They are not perfect, and that will be the character of the lens. Yes. But I need to buy an adapter for my Pen F. Yeah, they have adapters for everything, Andreas. You won't have any trouble finding one. And the Markto says, I also have that lens, the 200 f4 AI and the 135 2.8 AI. Also the 100mm series. E series. Yeah, the Series E are excellent. I really like the Pancake 50mm. God, but unfortunately, I left it in the basement and it got all fungusy and moldy. But the 50E Pancake was really, really a cool lens. I mean, I just like Pancake lenses. And it was sharp once you stopped it down. You know, you had to go to like f 2.8, f4, then it was really a great lens. And Wudang says, yes, that's the amazing ability with Micro Four Thirds. You can adapt lenses very good on the focal reducers. Also a good feature. Right now, if you want modern lenses with character, then you probably look at Cine lenses. Yes. And you know, another option are like those CCTV lenses that they make for those security cameras, but they sell them in with adapters and things for Micro Four Thirds. Those really make interesting lenses and have lots of character because they usually don't have too many elements, so there's a lot of imperfections in the image that come out. So the 35mm f1.6, I have a couple videos on that. I really think is an interesting lens. Was one of my favorites for a long time. That's all I used on my Pen F. Any ideas for a good adapter for M lenses? Any brand really. You know, don't spend too much on an adapter. I know Metabones makes like $100 one if you want absolute best quality. You can look at Metabones. Like if you search for, I forget who sells them, but the Voigtlander lenses, I think they sell really good adapters. You can check that site. I can't remember the name of it, but if you search for Voigtlander, there's a site there. I think they're the only distributor in the US for Voigtlander lenses. They, and I'm assuming you're in the US, I don't know. But they sell adapters for Micro Four Thirds along with their Voigtlander lenses. But those adapters should be very good because they're going to choose the best adapters for their lenses. And then of course Metabones is always really good. But then anything else, the only experience I have are the very cheap $10 to $20 adapters. Like what's this one? This one has been good to me. Photasy. I don't know if you can see that. This has been fine. You just have to be careful. Make sure the screws stay tight. You know, so get a if you want to get into adapting lenses, I recommend getting a nice set of very fine screwdrivers. You know, so you can tighten everything down when you get the lenses. Let's see. And Peter, oh, I'm sorry, those are for each other. And Roberto says bought Luminar 4 and Aurora, great deal from Peter's link. Oh, good. Yeah, I don't use that software, but that's good. Peter seems to like it, I guess. I don't watch the Luminar videos from anyone because I tried it and it was okay. But a lot of people love that software, you know. So I'm not knocking it at all. I just I use Lightroom and Workspace for me. And good afternoon from very wet hills near Manchester, UK. I should really be out doing landscapes, but I can't see that. Oh, yeah. And Marcia says, understand another language is easier than speaking. Passive versus active. Yes. Wow, what time? 9:12. God. Holy crap. I'm like 15 minutes behind here on the chat. I'm sorry. Is there a way to compress large video files for uploading to YouTube or cloud storage? I uploaded a 3 gig file yesterday and it took 2 hours. Okay, most of the time the YouTubes, Pete K is asking about compressing large video files. It depends on your software. Your software may be able to let you change the compression of the video. The most basic software usually says small, medium, large, or low quality, medium quality. I found medium quality in most software, it compresses it enough. But yeah, the best way to do it, if you don't want to, if you can't compress the file in the software, sometimes the software will state the kilobits. I can't remember. I think it's kilobits. Like, I think most HD video going beyond 10,000 or 20,000 kilobits is pointless for most video. If it's a very high action scene video, yeah, you need a higher bit rate to keep the pixelation down. But I say you could get away with a 10,000 kilobits. This stream, for example, right now is only, I have it set to, I think I set it to 5,000 kilobits. If I didn't, it's at 2,500. But 5,000 kilobits is enough for very simple video like this, where it's just a person talking head. But the more action and movement there is in the scene, like panning and things like that, you need to use a higher kilobit rate. So you need to find a software. I use DaVinci Resolve, which lets you adjust all of those settings. I don't know if the YouTube takes H.265 compression yet, because I don't have H.265 stuff, but H.265 is much better than the current standard of H.264, where you get better image quality with smaller files. So maybe look into video processor that can compress into H.265. I think a lot of people use Handbrake, something called Handbrake. I don't use it. to compress their images with decent quality, and then that software, and it's free, and that software you can set the bit rate, the compression scheme, the containers. There's all kinds of things in video you have to kind of get acquainted with. But there's lots of videos on YouTube about how to do that. So that's what I would recommend. And you could easily take a 3 gig file, because it's probably at a 30 kilobit bit rate if it's like 3 gig. I'm just guessing. But you could knock that down to 5,000 kilobits, or 5,000 kilobits, and knock that file size down to about 500 or 600 meg, right? Like a quarter of the size. So that's something I think Handbrake can do. And then you can watch it and see what the image quality is. And if it's still acceptable, at that bit rate, then you're good to go. And John Gabriel says, great, thanks, but at midnight here, so I'll check it out another time. Okay. And Craig says, hi, Rob. What are some good resources on shooting documentary street photography, telling stories, people in their environment through black and white images? There's a guy on YouTube, Craig, called Daniel Milnor. I think it's Milnor. I really like his channel. And he's also a guest speaker on this other channel called, I think it's Advancing Your Photography. But yeah, he's one of the best documentary photographers that does primarily black and white. I think a lot of his YouTube videos are in black and white, if not all of them. He's one of the best, and he has several videos specifically answering that question about telling stories in your black and white images. So Daniel Milnor. Let me just pull it up. Let me see if this is the right. Yeah, this guy. And then if we go to his videos, but if you search his name, he's a guest in a lot of videos as well that talks about this specific question. I don't see those videos here, but these are all really good, so I recommend him. He'll give you some good advice, I think. Oh, wrong button. Come on. If the stream crashes, because I got too many dang buttons here. All right. Like I said, he's also on a guest on Advancing Your Photography. So when you search his name, you'll see a lot of videos come up. So search his name plus stories. Well, Daniel Milnor, telling stories. Yeah, so see, like if I search this term here, Daniel Milnor telling stories, then you'll see all these videos come up. Telling stories with your camera, telling stories with your camera, storytelling without social media, tons of stuff. Creating visual stories. So yeah, check him out. He's awesome. Okay. And Peter says, thanks, Frederick. Oh, Peter has a lot of good suggestions there too. I've never heard of any of them, but there you go. And let me move down. I'm skipping a lot of these chats amongst yourselves because I fell behind. And then Wudang says, we are doing 4K 25K bit for our Wudang Kung Fu streams. Oh, okay, that's good. Thank you for sharing that, because there's a lot of action going on, right, with Kung Fu. And he's finding, and that's amazing. You can get 25K if you're doing 25K bits in 4K and still getting clean images. I would, I'm not a hardcore video guy, but that's good to know. And Plato, hey, how are you? Just got back from a photo walk. Did you start an hour early? I did. I'm sorry. Yeah, because today I'm going to my nephew's birthday, so I have to cut out earlier today. I can't stay as long, so I said rather than cut the live stream, like not do a live stream at all or just start earlier, I said I gotta just get up early and do one. And Peter says, hello, what would be the ideal conditions for using a white card to reset white balance? Well, it really depends on the because ideal conditions, okay, let me just start with that part of the question, although the answer is not that simple. Ideal conditions is where you only have one source of light, like sun coming through a window if you're indoors, or if there's no windows, you have one light in the room, like one desk lamp, one light above. Because when you have one light, you're not getting all different kinds of colors coming into the room from different light sources. Like a Christmas tree, that's like Christmas lighting, and or I should just say, excuse me, holiday lighting where everything's all different colors. It's a frickin' nightmare. You'll never get the white balance right. If you're going to use flash, the camera usually has a setting for flash white balance, but the flash has to be powerful enough to overcome other lighting if you're doing stuff indoors or outdoors, like with portraits. When you're outdoors, usually you want to put the white card or gray card, but the white card wherever the subject is going to be. So if the subject is in the shade, put the white card in the shade and white balance there. If the subject is more in the sun, put the white card, where the sun is. And what I usually do is I just try to remember where I found something in the image or in the scene that's white. And sometimes what I do, and where's my bag? Hold on. Oh, I always carry a white piece of paper in my camera bags. These are easy, right? And you want to buy just copy paper that has the maximum brightness. I've seen some like at 99%, but usually you can find paper that says 98% bright. So that's going to be the whitest paper. And what I'll do is I'll fold this down, smaller if I need to, but I'll put this somewhere in the image that I can brush out easily in Photoshop, right? Like on the grass or on the floor. Like if it's a wood floor, I try to put it in a place that I can easily brush out with Photoshop. If you can't brush things out, then yeah, don't do that. You have to do a custom white balance before you take the picture. But usually, you can find a spot to lay a little white piece of paper in the spot that is going to be similar, because the light changes constantly, especially outdoors. You may adjust for white balance, and 5 seconds later, the white balance changes on you because of a cloud or whatever, a bird flying over, and then your white balance is off again. So so I usually, that's what I do, because this costs nothing, and it works pretty well. So that's what I do. Oh, looks like I'm kind of caught up here. So if I missed anyone's questions, you can ask it again now. Because if I try to scroll up and find it, up and down this thing, I'll never find it. But yeah, for white balance, that's what I do. Is I'll just lay it down. If you're trying to get perfect white balance, the level of effort to do that is exponentially harder. But for most of us, just a piece of paper is good enough in a discrete place. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Craig. I really appreciate that. I guess you really like that answer. Thanks. um, what else can I expand on that? I think a lot of times, like in mixed lighting, that's what I do in mixed lighting is I use a flash if I'm indoors. And the flash just has to be powerful enough to overcome. Let's see if I can give you a good example of that since we have a couple minutes. I'm going to pull up one of my recent photography jobs here where the white balance was a nightmare in this one room. The worst, the hardest places to get the white balance right is, oh, you get the message, white balance levels are extreme. Yeah, you just have to keep trying. I get that once in a while. And what I'll do is I'll just move a little bit and take the picture again or move. Yeah, it's hard, but eventually I get there. I usually don't have that problem after a few tries, you know, when it says white balance is extreme. But sometimes I have to make adjustments or it's very rare that I can't get the custom white balance to work. But I do get that same error. Because what it's telling you is it's gone beyond like 14 or 15,000 K, or on the other side, I think 2,000 K is a lower limit. I don't remember exactly what the limits are. Oh, here it is. No, where is it? That's not the job. This is the job. Let me uncheck the flag because these are just the finished images. Yeah, I think this is a good example. How do I get this on the screen? Yeah, here's a good example. Like you see this room on the left. This is, you know, we got, I don't know if this is LED lighting, but you see how this lamp, a little different color than this lamp? And these two lamps are a little bit different color lighting. And then on top of that, we have this fluorescent lighting here on the top, which usually casts this green. So I essentially have all kinds of mixed lighting in this room. This is not the exact same picture, but it's the same room. I think this is the one I ended up delivering to the client instead of this one. But yeah, I used the flash to balance the white balance in the entire room, so that you can see, you know, the ceilings are white, the picture frames are white, the carpet is now this neutral gray, and the sofas are, you know, this nice cream color, versus over here, you know, the white balance is kind of all over the place, right? These blue walls are nice, more accurate. So, you know, real estate photography is like product photography. You know, you want to get the colors as accurate as possible. So that's but yeah, that's kind of one example. It's not the best example. Let me see. This other office I did was, you know, this is hard, right? Something like this where you have natural sunlight coming in, and then you have, this is tungsten lighting, and then over here was a fluorescent light. So again, I use flash and bracketing, all kinds of stuff to get that right. Like this is obvious, right? I used a flash. But you see these these ones that are in blue, are ones that I use where I pop the flash. And then the ones that are not blue is just ambient light. So here I pop the flash, you can see it's very bright. And it looks like a flash picture, right? But I can't deliver this to a client because it looks like you took this with a pocket camera. And then this was, where's the final image? This is the final image where I balanced. I had sunlight coming in here. I had these tungsten table lamps, and then I had this greenish fluorescent lighting. Lots of mixed lighting here. But with a flash, I was able to balance everything. So that is that. And hi Rob, do you use Pro Capture much? I just started using Pro Capture with David Crooks on one of my photo walks. That's how I got some butterfly pictures that you'll see in my Instagram or Flickr page. Pro Capture is awesome for like catching bugs and stuff in flight if you can get close enough. Because you can half press the shutter button. It's it's rolling through those frames for you, and then when the bug takes off, you hit the shutter button. Then you can go back and review the images and catch that moment that's in focus, and the wings are frozen and all of that stuff. So yeah, Pro Capture, I'm going to start to use that a lot more. I only just recently started using it though. And great white balance. Oh, okay, you're welcome. And why do they have underwater white balance? I don't know. I think there's some underwater cages and things you can get for some of the Olympus cameras. So it's designed for those specific cages and going underwater. However, I don't think it was meant for every camera, but they just put it in there because it's already in the software that they use in their TruePic processors. It's just my guess. And Arthur says, I don't think you have a Patreon account. Will you do that? I would subscribe to it. Oh, I appreciate that, Arthur. But honestly, a Patreon account implies that you're going to be able to offer things behind a paywall, so to speak, right? Like there's going to be more content and benefits to being a Patreon member. And honestly, I give my all every time, right? When I make a video or I do these live streams, I'm always doing my very best for you. And adding a Patreon account, I don't know what more I could do, right? To give more information or more tutorials or anything like that. So I didn't think it'd be fair to start a Patreon account where people are dropping $1, $10 a month, whatever it is. I don't know how it works exactly, but they're dropping money every month automatically, and they're not getting any more content than they already are. That people that are paying nothing, right? So, people have asked me that before, and I've thought about it, and I said, I don't know what else I can do. I'm doing all I can when I can, because I'm juggling, life, right? We all have problems, right? But so when I can do videos and stuff, I always try to do my best in the time that I have. So that's why I don't do Patreon, because I don't think I can give any more than I already am. But that said, I always have links for coffee and PayPal, and I have my Amazon affiliate links that a lot of you have taken advantage of, and I appreciate that when you buy through my affiliate links. The key to using the affiliate links with Amazon, though, is you have to buy something within 24 hours. Otherwise, I don't get credit. And then, of course, to buy me a coffee and PayPal links. So I get good support there as well. And that's great, but I like the advertising revenue. I mean, it's pennies, right? Like that exposure video, I made like $1, and I spent probably 30 hours making it. But I made like $1 in advertising revenue in a week, and that's only going to go down from there, right? So there goes my mental acuity again. What was I talking about? I don't remember. But so my best is that it's gonna go down as my brain fails me. I don't know why. I gotta find some brain pills or some crazy pills or something. A multivitamin. I don't know what it is, or maybe just exercise. That's what I need to do. I need to exercise so that I get blood to my brain so I can think straight. uh, Danny says, how do you find or Evan think what's good will be good to take pictures of when you're out on a photo walk? I am very opportunistic, you know, where I don't know if I'm gonna go out on a photo walk or not usually. And sometimes I'm driving and I says, oh, let me just go down this road and see what's here, if there's anything to take a picture of. But what's been kind of fun lately for me is this photography club. Is they have themes, and so if you can find a photography club, like I use meetup.com, if you can find a photography club local in your area, see what they're doing and where they're going and what the themes are, because they'll know a lot of places that maybe you've never known about before. Like this photography club, since I joined it, I was like, man, you guys know all the best places. I've been living here my entire life. And then they'll have a theme. Like if you look at my Instagram, I have a lot of mushroom pictures because last week the theme was mushrooms, and we went to a specific park because someone told them that there was like 40 different varieties of mushrooms. So that's that's a question that I have for myself all the time. Where do I get some ideas? What inspiration? What can we do? And then when I joined that one group on meetup.com, a lot of other suggested groups come up that are local to me, and they have meetings and things. I mean, you don't have to go or join their photography clubs if you don't want to, but use it as a resource for ideas and inspiration of things to do in your area when you go out. If you want to see some local photography, because like for me, it's hard to find pictures of Alexandria and parts of Virginia randomly searching, right, through Flickr or whatever, that I can relate to and get some ideas from. So when I go to these photography club websites, they post pictures from their photo walks and things that are local to me. And I'm like, oh, man, I've never seen that before. Where is that? And I'll find it. Or I'll say, I've been there 1,000 times and I never took a picture like that, So that's what would be my recommendation. And Plato's asking, does Pro Capture work when you use the back button focus? Do you need to focus and press the shutter button? I haven't tried that. That's a good question. I haven't tried that. I mean, you have to be in continuous capture, shutter speed. Well, I guess they got Pro High and Pro Low. Pro Low will do continuous autofocus. Pro High is just one-time focus. I've never tried that. Like I said, I just started really getting into Pro Capture, but I haven't tried that. That's a good question though. Does Pro Capture work? Oh, sorry, I'm reading the same one. Unless you have earth-shattering videos, the ad revenue won't help much. You need to interview the president or something. Yeah. Yeah, ad revenue is just pennies, but I think it's a compromise from, because you get the ad revenue plus any donations and buy me a coffee things and affiliate links. It all adds up, I mean, you can't really make a living with it until you get to probably a couple 100,000 subscribers at least, depending on the topic. But photography topics like cameras and photography, you need a couple 100,000 subscribers before you start to make part-time income, like if it was a second job. And then I'd say, once you hit that, then you're getting, I think, decent revenue, at least here in the US. That's my gut feeling. I wouldn't know. I don't have a couple 100,000 subscribers. Maybe that's not true. But with the 23,000 subscribers I have, it's just pocket change. It puts gas in my car, feeds the dog, that kind of thing. But I appreciate every penny, like super chats and coffees and direct donations. Those are like 100 times more money than any video ever makes. And it doesn't seem like much, right? But man, I'm poor, so I appreciate everything. And I need to uh, get ready for my next live stream that starts at 10 o'clock. So let me see if I got anything. Oh, thank you, Arthur. And half of my meetup photo group uses smartphones. Yeah, still, right, Brad? They that's funny though. Photo group that uses smartphones. I mean, why not? But I guess uh yeah, listen, if its viewers can watch the ads and help in that way, you can do that, or you can just share the video. Sharing the video helps a lot to get the views up. That in turn generates subscribers and ad revenue and all of that good stuff. Because I don't get a lot of shares on my videos, and that's fine. I mean, the content needs to stand on its own. I mean, don't share the video if you don't like it, obviously, right? Uh, but that's uh, that's why I don't do Patreon and things like that. If my content needs to stand on its own and provide value for what it is, and people will watch and hit the like button and share the video, and then organically grow the channel that way. And if it doesn't grow, it's okay. I mean, it's really for me as well. You know, I as a growing as a photographer, you know, interacting with other photographers either through the live streams or in the comments section or on my forum. All of things have value too for me, not just the actual dollars and cents of doing this on YouTube, but the interaction I get and the things that I learn from all of you, right? Um, as well has value. I mean, it's a free education for me too to do this, because most of you have so much photography experience, much more than I do. Uh, so I do learn a lot, and if I'm not learning anything, I'm having fun, right? So I put value in that as well, not just in the dollars and cents of doing something like this, but any money that people donate, I always appreciate, because there's it's it like I said, it helps me buy food for my dog and things. Open boxes of toys if you want to be on a YouTube millionaire. I don't know if that's true anymore because YouTube has some sort of uh what is it called? You know, when you have videos that appeal to little kids, your ad revenue is fractions of my fraction. To sustain a chat and not run out of anything to say is a credit. Yeah, I have the gift of gab, maybe, you know. But okay, I need to get ready for my next live stream. So I really appreciate everyone coming in. I always enjoy seeing everyone, you know, in the chat section and talking about cameras and photography, and I do my best to answer your questions as always. Thanks again for being here with me today, and I'll be back on Tuesday morning and Thursday next week. So you guys have a good rest of the week until I see you again.